You're listening to The Hard Truth with John Deaton. John Deaton is a Marine veteran, lawyer, and best-selling author who stared down poverty, survived street violence, and beat cancer to fight another day. From the streets to the courtroom, Deaton has taken on corporate greed and fought against government fraud and overreach. Always for the little guy, a proud father of 3 girls, Deaton brings you the raw, unfiltered truth that hits hard and holds nothing back. Join us as we dive into his journey, his vision, and what he hopes to bring to the people of Massachusetts.
Don't touch that dial or change the channel because it's Sunday at 7 p.m. and you're listening to The Hard Truth on iHeart's WRKO. I'm John Deaton. Good evening, everyone. As usual, it has been a busy week. We have seen all kinds of things go down. Big news, huge news in the world today in the fact that President Trump has seemed to have negotiated a ceasefire peace deal between Hamas and Israel and the Palestinian people. Huge news, huge news. And I got to tell you something. If President Trump, and many of you know I haven't been a big Trump supporter, right? And I support the policies, but I haven't been like the biggest fan of President Trump. I've been critical of President Trump in the past. I've given President Trump credit. However, when I believe that credit is deserved, and I am shocked. Well, you know what? I'm not shocked. I'm saddened that only one Democrat in the United States Senate or even the House has said something positive about the fact that there is negotiated peace in the Middle East. And when we say negotiated peace, understand right now, it's not just that a ceasefire has been agreed to and that the hostages, if alive or whoever is still alive, will be released. It's that the surrounding Arab countries have agreed and have supported it and are on board to support this deal. I mean, when is the last time you had all those different factions of the world in the Middle East in an agreement? And you have to give credit to President Trump because of his style, his personality, his unpredictability, whatever leadership or even lack of leadership quality critics want to say, it helped lead to this peace agreement. And one United States Senator, Fetterman from Pennsylvania, has come out and said, giving credit to President Trump, and he's even went as far as to say that if President Trump is also able to negotiate and be instrumental in bringing a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, that Fetterman, a Democrat, Pennsylvania, United States Senator, will lead the charge in trying to get the Nobel Peace Prize awarded to President Trump. And there is silence. Bernie Sanders, silence. Elizabeth Warren, silence. Ed Markey, silence. AOC, silence. Ayanna Presley, silence. All the people that were screaming for a ceasefire, that were calling genocide and all of these things, they have said nothing. They haven't posted one thing like, this is good. This is great. You know, when Trump derangement syndrome has reached your brain and infected your brain to a level that you can't say, good job, or this is positive, people will stop dying, children will stop dying, Palestinians will stop starving, and that's a good thing. You can't say that because you're afraid by some kind of implication that you're giving credit to President Trump. When you hate a human being that much, you shouldn't be in elected office. You shouldn't be. in office. You don't have the leadership. You don't have the maturity to be in office. If you allow hate to consume you to that degree, then you can't lead your constituents. You can't do what's right for America because you're consumed with hate. I'm just, I can't even be angry. I'm saddened. It's so tragic that that's the state of affairs that we've gotten into in this country, in this division, that we can't say, good job. I mean, imagine this. Do you think Ed Markey, who's running for re-election, you think he'll be able to stand on the stage and say, illegal crossings at our southern border are down 95%? 95%. The border is pretty much closed, secure. And only people who have legitimate business in America, legitimate paperwork to be in America are coming in through our southern and our northern border. That's a good thing. And you know who it's good for? It's good for Massachusetts. Because let's be honest, the border crisis has bankrupted this state. That's not hyperbole. That's not an exaggeration. It has bankrupted us because of piss poor leadership by our elected leaders. Governor Healy has spent $4 billion. $4 billion. Housing, feeding, clothing, giving health care, Uber rides, to appointments, to these illegals. No American citizen who is struggling, who was born here, to my knowledge, is given free Uber rides, free Lyft rides. I mean, American here, if they don't have a car and they don't walk, if they're not in walking distance to the supermarket, you know what they use? They use public transportation, like me and my mom used to use. We get on a bus, and sometimes you had to catch 2 buses or even 3 buses to get to the grocery store. And then you get from the grocery store, you get back on a bus. Okay? That's what people who were born here, who don't have money and don't have a car, that's what they do. But yet you could come here illegally and we'll put you up in a hotel. We'll send 3 meals a day. We'll cater them and pay millions and millions and millions of dollars to catering companies to bring your food to you to your hotel room. We'll give you money, food stamps, and cash. Here's a cell phone. And when you got to go to the doctor, no, you don't have to catch a bus. We'll just give a contract to a car company, and you can just call that car company and get free transportation anywhere you want to go. You can be catered to. I mean, you realize that if you've lived here and you're in the poverty, under the poverty line here in Massachusetts, that you're watching illegals be treated like royalty. And that's not an exaggeration. Trust me, I lived in the hood. I lived on food stamps and welfare. I didn't eat for days. I listened to my mother cry at night, many a night, because we all went to bed hungry and her children were saying, but mommy, I'm hungry. But mommy, I'm hungry. It's time to go to bed, John. But mommy, I'm hungry. And then listen to her cry herself to sleep and listen to that shame that she had in those tears. I've lived that life. And trust me, if we were watching, struggling like that, going to bed hungry as an American citizen, but these illegal migrants, and it's nothing against the illegal migrants. It's not their fault. It's not their fault. It's elected leaders' fault. But imagine that poor person living in Mattapan, Roxbury, Brockton, Lowell, Lawrence, Holyoke, and you're seeing these people being catered to. That's how you're going to view it. Like, what is special about them? I've been here all my life. And no one is feeding me. No one's giving me free rides. I'm struggling. No one's giving me that much in food stamps. That is how they perceive it, because that's the only way you would perceive it. But that's what we've been doing. And so the fact that the border has been secured is a good thing. Yet these left liberal Democrats, they don't want to acknowledge that. Yes, I disagree with other things. I don't agree with snatching up that student off the street who was here on a visa, and Marco Rubio denied the visa, invalidated it, and then they snatched her off the street to deport her. I 100% disagree with that. I mean, what she wrote was an op-ed, and it was against Israel. But we don't snatch people off the street. So two things can be equal at the same time. You can say, I disagree with President Trump's administration on this situation, but boy, I'm sure glad that the border is closed, because it's bankrupting our state, and he deserves credit on that issue. Okay, that's the border. They love to talk about race and xenophobia, and so they're going to refuse to give credit where credit is due on the border because of all those racial and xenophobia issues, and they're seeing ICE agents come and take illegals out of the country, and so they're going to never give credit for that. Okay, fine. As stupid and illogical as I think that is, fine. But a peace deal? Where people stop dying? Where children stop starving? Where bombs stop getting dropped? You're telling me, really, that you can't tweet? AOC can't tweet. She can even tweet, I still hate President Trump, but good job on the peace deal. Or don't even give Trump credit. How about this is good news? But they can't. And you got to ask yourself why. You are listening to The Hard Truth. I'm John Deaton. You can reach me at john@hardtruthshow.com. Come back from the break. Welcome back to the show. You're listening to The Hard Truth. I'm John Deaton. Listen, everyone, you can reach me at john@hardtruthshow.com. john@hardtruthshow.com. Follow me on X at John E. Deaton, number 1. John E. Deaton 1 on X. And if you really want to learn all there is to know about me, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful, okay, it's all in there. You can read my book, Food Stamp Warrior, that's available on Amazon. You know, we were talking before the break about Trump derangement syndrome, the fact that people can't even bring themselves to give credit that a peace deal has been struck between Israel and Hamas, Palestinians in Gaza. Bombs are going to stop being dropped on human beings, children. There's going to be a two-state solution according to the plan. All the things that Bill Clinton tried to do with Yasser Arafat. Okay, that Bill Clinton, we're talking about the 90s. We could go back further than that, and we could talk about Jimmy Carter. You know who knows a lot about this would be Ed Markey, because he was in office. Believe it or not, he was in Congress before Jimmy Carter became president. That's how long Ed Markey has been in the United States Congress, since 1976. But this conflict between Israel and Palestinians, this two-state solution, are we not going to have a two-state solution? All of that has been going on for decades and decades. Many would argue for thousands of years. And a peace deal is on the table. And I want you to think about if Barack Obama were president and this happened. And you know, I think it's actually a good thing that I wasn't a Trump supporter. You know, I really do, because it gives me, I think, more credibility in many ways. Not more credibility, that's the wrong word. Um, it sends a message that you have to be able to have an independent voice if you're going to be a leader in the United States Congress. You have to be able to not just succumb to an agenda that one side wants. And we know we have elected leaders. You know, Elizabeth Warren, when I ran against Elizabeth Warren, her main argument against me, her number one argument, it was really her only argument, and this came up during the debates, was don't vote for Deaton because he's a Republican. That was it. That was her argument. She's a Democrat. She knows that Massachusetts historically votes blue. She demonized Republicans, made all Republicans seem like they were infected with disease, that they were toxic, that they were evil, that they were fascist, that they were Hitler-loving Nazis or something. If you all remember, on the stage, on the debate stage, I addressed this head on when I said to the audience, to the camera, I said, you know, Senator Warren wants to act like all Democrats are great and all Republicans are evil. I got news for you, Senator. All of you suck in Congress. Some of you listening may remember that moment during the debates. Well, I meant that. I meant that. My criticism is bipartisan, brother. I think that Lindsey Graham, who is a Republican, has got to go. I think that Mitch McConnell, who is a Republican, has got to go. I think that Chuck Grassley, who is 92 years old and thinking of running again, which would mean if he wins, he'd be 101 years old in the United States Senate. He's a Republican in Iowa. I think it's time to go. I don't think you need to be 100 years old sitting in the Senate, voting on blockchain and artificial intelligence and robotics and automation. I think it's time for you to go play with the great-great-great-grandkids, or you're so damn old, okay? Ed Markey is 80 years old. He's been in the Congress for 50 years. 50. Okay, everybody listen to me. 50, 50, not 15, 50 years. Do you realize that Ed Markey has been in Congress 10 years longer than the average person in Massachusetts has been alive? The average voter in Massachusetts is 40 years old. The average person, 40. Markey's been in D.C. 50 years. So for a decade, he's been in Washington longer than the average person in Massachusetts has been alive. It's insane. Okay? And so, but because I wasn't, this sort of Trump disciple, and I was focusing on our issues and our problems, and I was like, well, if half the country hates you, then, you really can't lead. We need to find someone who can unite the country. This division is what's killing us. It's killing us. So, but anybody with common sense can say, I'm glad the border is secured. And man, am I glad that people are going to stop dying in the Middle East. And you know what? President Trump's not a perfect person. I disagree with him on many things. But God bless him for this deal. Like, what is so difficult about that? But they can't do it. I think, can you imagine if AOC or Ayanna Presley or any of them, Markey and Warren, if they could get on camera and say, like, I disagree with President Trump on many things, but God bless him for this deal, because young children are going to stop dying and starving. I think that their bodies would start convulsing, like they just got infected. The cure, the TDS cure was injected in them, and now their body's reacting to it. That's what I think would happen. I think they think that that's what might happen, and they can't bring themselves to say a damn thing that is positive. And that is just tragic. It's tragic in our country. But I'll say it, okay? I'll say it. God bless President Trump for negotiating this peace deal. Because I got to tell you something. I saw some of the pictures of the wreckage in Gaza. I've seen some of the videos. I've seen children without limbs, okay? And I'm telling you, I can feel the emotion coming out of my voice right now. You look at children their arms are hanging off or their head has been crushed by a building that is crushed on them, and you realize that a 2-year-old is dead. And then you look at these pictures of people starving. And that's going to end. And my God, let's all rejoice, stand up, applaud. And it's okay. Good job, President Trump. I'm proud of you for that. Okay, every American should be able to say that because we've been spending billions of dollars on these wars. Okay, in the last 2 years, we have spent $31 billion in aid to Israel. Okay, now, granted, I know that Israel's our ally. Okay, but $31 billion, and I want you to think about this. In Israel, every citizen in Israel has a bank account given to them by the government. In Israel, they have health care for all their citizens. They have pensions. They have free college education. So that $31 billion helps a foreign country, even though they're our ally, and Israel's our ally. And Iran last time, you know that I'm pro-Israel, and their right to defend themselves and all those things. I think they took it too far. I think there were war crimes committed. That does happen in war, and those need to be addressed. But I'm not taking anything away from our relationship with Israel. But $31 billion, and they have free education, they have free health care. We don't. We're $31 trillion. We have a government shutdown that we're going to talk about after the break, a government shutdown over health care and nasty politics in America. But that $31 billion went there. You want to talk about Ukraine? We have spent $200 billion. I just want you all to know, with $200 billion on the Ukraine war, that would end homelessness in America. That $200 billion would provide free universal pre-K, okay, child care for 10 years and have a lot of money left over for everyone in America. You could take the $200 billion, you could extend Medicaid into the states that haven't adopted it and provide health care for 20 million Americans who are uninsured. You could do that for 20 years and still have money left over. Think of what we could do for infrastructure, our roads, $200 billion. In the last infrastructure bill, they had $100 billion for bridges and roads. Imagine $200 billion that could fix our bridges and our roads across America. Think of our deficit. So the fact that that's going to stop and we're not going to have to spend that much money is a good thing. You're listening to The Hard Truth. Come back. Welcome back to the show. You're listening to The Hard Truth. I'm John Deaton. You can reach me at john@hardtruthshow.com. So we've been talking about the peace deal. We've been talking about TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, all kinds of things. And there's so much more to talk about. I mean, we really haven't addressed the shutdown, and this is what is very troubling. This shutdown that we're in right now, I think we're in day 9 or 10, I don't know the exact day, is probably the best, I mean, it's more appropriate to say worse, but best example of just how broken that our politics have become in this country, and how politicians love to say one thing one day, and then when they face that very same thing, all of a sudden they have amnesia. And I'll give you an example. In 2020, President Biden won the election and became president. The Senate and the House were also won by Democrats. So you had the Democrats in control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And Republicans didn't like it. Conservatives didn't like it. And there was all kinds of things going on. We know about the DOJ. We know about lawfare. We know about weaponization. But they passed legislation. And there were Republicans who disagreed with that legislation. I'll give you an example. Biden passed the infrastructure bill. And a lot of Republicans voted against the infrastructure bill because it increased the deficit, because of multiple reasons. But that's what happens. There was an election. The Democrats won. They have enough votes to pass a bill that they want to pass. Now, I want to point out, because I can't let it go, that in that infrastructure bill, I mentioned in the last, before the break, $110 billion was dedicated to bridges across America. Yet, out of that infrastructure bill, not a dollar was allocated to the 2 Cape Cod bridges that were deemed functionally obsolete by the Army Corps of Engineers. So I just want you to think about that. We had 2 United States senators, okay, 9 congressmen and women, and not a dollar of the infrastructure bridge bill went to our bridges. We don't even have a voice in the United States Senate when Democrats are in control. And why is that? Because Elizabeth Warren and Markey are going to do whatever the leadership tells them to do. Whatever is in the best interest of the Democratic Party, the Democratic agenda, they're going to do it. They're not going to hold up and say, maybe, you know what, Massachusetts isn't getting enough, so I may not vote for this. They will never do that. Never. So Massachusetts doesn't have a voice. We need to send somebody who will stand up and say, I'm not voting for this because it's not good enough for Massachusetts and America. Okay, just like the big, beautiful bill. Lisa Murkowski in Alaska wouldn't vote for it at first, but then she said Alaska's not getting enough. And then Alaska got billions of dollars and she voted for it. We need someone who's willing to stand up and say, whether, if I was in the United States Senate and President Trump and the Congress passed a bill, if it wasn't good enough for Massachusetts, I would say, you're not getting my vote. Massachusetts is going to have to get something. We're going to have to get paid. I'm not going to just let it go to all these other states. You need someone to fight for our state, for our citizens. They don't do that. Okay, but the point I'm making is that the infrastructure bill passed, and then there was a threat of a shutdown, right? Because couldn't agree, not agree. Well, the Republicans went ahead and voted for a continuing resolution with the Democrats in control. And the Democrats, when they won the 2020 election, they said, elections have consequences. Remember, elections have consequences. They kept saying it over and over and over. Now let's fast forward to 2024. There's an election. President Trump not only wins the Electoral College, he wins the popular vote. But the Senate flips to Republican, and the House also flips. So basically, in 2020, the Democrats were in control. In 2024, the Republicans are in control. And the Republicans voted for a bill. And that bill is called the Big Beautiful Bill. And I've talked about that bill. And I've told you my shortcomings I have with that bill, my criticism. And I told you that if I was in the United States Senate, I would have used my leverage to get Massachusetts part of that bill, that we'd have got something, just like Alaska got something, and just like other states got something because their senators spoke up and said, unless my state gets something, I'm not voting. And the point is that the Republicans got their bill passed just like the Democrats did with the infrastructure bill. And in the Big Beautiful Bill, the bill has provisions that restrict Medicaid. It also takes Medicaid away from able-bodied workers. Okay, and so the Democrats are upset because there are subsidies related to the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. And we'll talk about that because the Affordable Care Act was never affordable. See, it's only affordable because the government uses taxpayer dollars to subsidize the insurance payments and premiums. Well, basically, the Big Beautiful Bill has stripped down some of those subsidies, many of them, okay? And the Democrats are like, well, guess what's going to happen? People's premiums are going to go up, and people are going to lose health care. And that's true. It is going to happen for some. It's not quite as catastrophic as the Democrats claim, but there is no doubt that people's premiums are going to go up, and it's something we have to address. We have to fix health care in this country. We have to. We must. Okay, we spend over $4 trillion a year on health care in this country. And the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was never affordable. It is a failure. Okay, there's parts of it that we can use, but we have to reform it. But the point I'm trying to make is that the Democrats have shut down the government because they're demanding that those provisions of the Big Beautiful Bill be rescinded. So do you understand the problem here? There was an election, and Trump won, and the Republicans won, and they passed legislation. That's how our system works. And the Democrats are now saying, no, we don't like that. And you have to change the bill that you just passed, or we're not going to pay soldiers, sailors, Marines, Coast Guard, air traffic controllers. We're going to shut down the whole thing because we are mad that you won, Trump. That's really what it comes down to. Because if the Republicans would have shut down the government after the infrastructure bill because they disagreed with certain provisions of the infrastructure bill, can you imagine the outrage? And that's what they did. That's not how the system works. What you normally do, because they never talk about a balanced budget. I mean, there hasn't been a congressman or United States senator in 20 years that the word balanced budget has come out of their mouth. So what they do is they pass a continuing resolution that's called a clean continuing resolution, which means there's no pork in it. The Republicans don't say, okay, well, we want to add this or add that. It just basically says the status quo will pass this continuing resolution so the lights stay on in the government, so that we pay our bills. There's no extras for anyone. That's what a clean resolution, continuing resolution means. And they wouldn't do it. They said, no, we don't like the fact that about these subsidies related to Obamacare. And unless you change them, well, this is what I'm getting at. Elections have consequences. And that is such a bad precedent because what it means is when you have the minority in the Congress, all they have to do is threaten to shut the government down and play this game, hoping that because you're in control, your party's in control, that it'll be blamed on you. And that's what they're doing. Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they're basically looking in the camera to the American people and saying, who's in charge? The Republicans are in charge. Trump's in the White House, and the Republicans have the Senate, and they have the House. So if there's a government shutdown, it must be their fault. They're in charge. That's the political game that they're playing. But people are going to miss a paycheck this week. And hardworking people are not going to be able to pay their mortgage. People are not going to be able to buy groceries. Here's a statistic, people. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 60%. 60% of Americans don't have $1,000 set aside. $1,000 set aside in case they have an emergency that month. And we're going to deny them their paychecks because of politics? Shame. Shame on all of them. You listen to The Hard Truth. Come back. Welcome back to The Hard Truth. I'm John Deaton. This is WRKO 680 AM. And you can reach me at johnhardtruthshow.com. John at hardtruthshow.com. So we've been talking about Trump derangement syndrome, the shutdown, all kinds of things. Well, as I said before the break, shame on all these politicians. Shame on them because they're holding the American people hostage, and the American people are going to suffer. Now, what we're going to see also, and I think that the Democrats, Trump isn't going to get a third term, okay? He loves to needle them. He loves to poke at them. He loves it, right? He offers them Trump 2028 hats when they come into the White House. But Trump's 80 years old, and he's not going to try to run for a third term. He can't. Okay, the reality is we have, it's in the Constitution. There was an amendment after FDR was president for 16 years. They wanted to change it, so they changed it. And it's now in the Constitution, 23rd Amendment, that president can only serve 2 terms. So President Trump can't run, but he can take this opportunity because he's not worried about a reelection. Remember, and this applies to President Trump too, and some of you out here who deny that, you're just being blinded by your love or loyalty for President Trump. But when President Trump was first elected in 2016, they immediately began worrying about reelection. And Obama was that way. Biden was that way. George W. Bush was that way. Every president's way, right? They want to go into the White House for 8 years. So as they're in their first term, they're always worried about, well, is this going to cost me reelection? And it causes them to have a lot more concern. And I think President Trump, just like everyone else, had that issue during his first term. And I think that's why you didn't see him drain the swamp the way that he had said he was going to, and that the deep state and all of those things, and he was more reserved, right? And he deferred to more of the political handlers, if you will, because they're worried about the reelection. Well, now he's in his second term, and contrary to his jabbing and poking of them, he's not going to run for a third term. He's not going to try to test the constitutionality of that amendment. Plus, he's 80 years old, right? He's going to want to golf, right? He's going to want to work on his library, and he's going to want to have the best presidential library that any president's ever had. I imagine President Trump's team are going to go around and look at all the different presidential libraries and decide that they're going to have the biggest and the baddest and the most incredible and the most expensive and the most glorious presidential library. I guarantee you that that's what President Trump's attention is going to be on. And so the point I'm making here is that when you have that kind of freedom, where you're not worried about being reelected, you become more unpredictable. And President Trump is going to probably use this shutdown to do things that normally he wouldn't have the power to do. So, for example, we're hearing that there's going to be a permanent furlough. Now, that means fired, not just laid off, but a 50% of IRS agents. All right. Now you can hear the people cheering that, but 50%. Remember, under Biden, they wanted 87,000 more IRS agents and personnel hired. 87,000. And remember when they said to you, oh, it's for the billionaires. Well, there's 200 billionaires. I'm sorry, there's 800 billionaires. 800 billionaires in America. So if you're going to dedicate it to the billionaires, then you only need 800 IRS agents, and each one of them gets one billionaire. You don't need 87,000. Those 87,000 were coming for small businesses. They were coming for you and me, right? Because we're running at a deficit of $2 trillion a year. We take in $5 trillion in taxes per year. 4.9 trillion is the exact number. We spend $7 trillion per year. So we bring in $5 trillion, we spend $7 trillion. That's a $2 trillion deficit every year, each year. That's why we have a $37 trillion deficit. So those 87,000 IRS agents were going to come in, and they were going to try to make up that difference, not by going after the billionaires or the multi-millionaires, but going by the pizza shop owner, the sandwich shop owner, the coffee shop owner, okay? Small businesses. And so President Trump is like, okay, half of you are gone, and you're not getting your job back, even when we shut the lights back on in the government. And I think you're going to see there's talks of as many as 750,000 federal employees are going to permanently be fired. Listen, there's going to be litigation. When the government comes back on, eventually those folks that were fired are going to file lawsuits. There'll be unions representing them. There'll be litigation. Maybe they get reinstated, maybe they don't. But the point I'm making here is that the Democrats, I think, are again underestimating the situation. And they pushed for a shutdown. They rejected a continuing resolution in order to try to force President Trump's hand. And the theory that they're going on is that the public pressure, the American people being outraged and upset that the government is shut down, the loss of services, that's going to cause outrage, and the outrage will be taken on against the administration in power, which is Trump. Okay, I understand the theory. The flaw in that argument is that they think Trump cares about re-election or something. And he doesn't. And, does he have a young vice president with J.D. Vance? Yes. Is Marco Rubio young? Yes. Are there young Republicans who want to continue what President Trump has done and stay in power? Yes. But President Trump himself isn't worried about it. And so I think they're overplaying their hand, and he'll just cut whatever he wants to cut and let the cards, fall on the table as they may. I think that's what's going to happen. And so I just think that they want to gain power, that this could backfire on them. And, the Republicans will show a poll that the public blames it on the Democrats. The Democrats will show a poll that the public blames it on the Republicans. Listen, there's a reason these people only have 20% approval rating. My position is that they all have got to go. We need new people. We need new leadership, because this old leadership, this old way of doing things has got to change. We're in an era of artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, quantum computing, blockchain, crypto technologies. The world is changing, and this AI is changing every day. We have got to have leaders who appreciate that, who only want to put the country and the state they represent first, who doesn't want to go to Washington and live there for 30, 40 years. My God, I want to ask Ed Markey, I really do. I want to sit across the table from this 80-year-old man and say, Ed, why the hell are you running again? Why the hell do you want to? You've been in Washington for 50 years. What is so attractive about that swamp? You haven't accomplished anything. You preach Medicare for all. That's never happened. It's never going to happen. We're never going to go to a single-payer, government-run, exclusively government-run healthcare system. It's never going to happen. You're never going to get enough votes for that. Plus, it would cost about $50 trillion in 10 years. So it's never going to happen. The Green New Deal is never going to happen. Ed Markey didn't even vote for the Green New Deal, and he's the co-author. It came on the Senate floor, and he voted present. He can't even give his own support for the Green New Deal. But you're going to watch in this election, he's going to talk about the Green New Deal. Just like he talked about the Green New Deal in 2019, and it's never going to happen. So he only talks like these talking points, right? Medicare for all, Green New Deal. We have to, get rid of all guns. We have to allow biological boys to compete against girls. Of course, men can get pregnant. I mean, that's what he says. He says all these talking points for the progressives and the far left so he can stay in office. And fine, that's what he believes he has to say to continue to win, like the Democratic primary, and then assume that he's going to win because he's in Massachusetts and he's a Democrat and that they're never going to vote for a Republican. I get the political thought process. But my question on a personal level, I want to say, Ed, why the hell do you want to be in Washington with these people? Like, really? This swamp? Don't you want to do other things in your life? You really want it? But you need to ask yourself, why would someone want to stay there? Because of the perks. Because it's self-service, not public service. Listen, this show flew by. I had so much more to get to. The crime in Massachusetts that's happening, and troops possibly coming, and ICE. I'll see you next week. Be safe.
You're listening to The Hard Truth with John Deaton. John Deaton is a Marine veteran, lawyer, and best-selling author who stared down poverty, survived street violence, and beat cancer to fight another day. From the streets to the courtroom, Deaton has taken on corporate greed and fought against government fraud and overreach. Always for the little guy, a proud father of 3 girls, Deaton brings you the raw, unfiltered truth that hits hard and holds nothing back. Join us as we dive into his journey, his vision, and what he hopes to bring to the people of Massachusetts.